Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Kathy Wriggling, and I'm the Education Coordinator for Orange Audubon Society. And tonight we're going to tell you all about the Great Backyard Bird Count, which is coming up later this month, and how you can get your students involved as little as 15 minutes or as long as you want. So let's talk about the Great Backyard Bird Count. Okay, this program is being brought to you on behalf of the Cornell K-12 educational program. Susan, if you could advance it. And they have all kinds of resources for you on their Cornell K-12 education website. And they also make it possible for people that don't work there directly to be ambassadors and to present their programs, which is what I'm doing. And it's also being presented on behalf of Orange Audubon Society. And our mission is to promote public understanding of and interest in wildlife and the environment that supports it. So thank you again for joining us tonight. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat and I'll go over those at the end, or you can speak up at the end. Okay, so let's go ahead. So community science, people everywhere report observations of natural events using basic scientific protocols. And if you look at this satellite image of the world, those aren't lights. Those are data points for eBird during a past Great Backyard Bird Count. So a lot of people are involved in this project, and it's one of the longest running citizen science or community science projects that there is. So if you've never done this, welcome. It's a pretty exciting thing to do. So why community science? And I call it community science. It's a little more inclusive term. It's exciting. It's real world. It's authentic. It's an opportunity to study wild animals. To me, birds are one of the easiest animals for you to study with your students because they're pretty much around anywhere. You're going to spark your kids' curiosity. You're going to teach STEM content and meet standards. And it's very motivating. You're helping the scientific community by providing data, even if it's just a little snippet, and you're connecting your kids to the real scientific community. And I'm going to show you how you can make that really real to them. And it is fun. And why birds? Don't you love this photo? Of course, birds, like I just mentioned. Go ahead to the next slide. If you've seen the Birds movie, this might look familiar. And birds are everywhere. Now, if you're not really aware of them, if you haven't really paid attention to them, you might not think about that. But the more you start paying attention to birds, you'll see them more places. And you won't be so bird blind. And your students won't either. And they'll start noticing them a lot more as well. And you might wonder, well, how can I do this project? I don't know anything about birds, but you can learn to identify your local birds with some resources and practice. And you have time between now and the count to actually help your students learn them as well. So here are some steps to take before the count starts on February 17th. This is the 26th annual count. So first decide where on your campus that you're going to count birds. You want to look for places that are good habitat. There's food for the birds, there's water and shelter, hopefully, or at least one or two of those components. So this location here, I see a native plant with some seed heads on it. So that's a great place to look for birds because they're hungry. Decide on a time. Now, ideally, morning is best because that's when birds are most active. But it's February and it's not 90 degrees out, so you should be able to find them any time of day. You're going to want to create a free account on eBird. eBird is one of the oldest citizen science databases that there are. You go to ebird.org and it's very easy to set up. And I'll show you on the next slide. And when you create the Cornell Lab account with eBird, you're going to have access to all these other programs, including Bird Academy, which has a lot of free courses you can take. Celebrate Urban Birds, the Macaulay Library, which has lots of images and sound recordings, Nest Watch, and Project Feeder Watch. So it's all inclusive and it works very easily. Then you're going to choose a resource for helping identify birds the day of the count. So there's a couple of options. One is Merlin, which is an amazing free app that you can get. And it's from Cornell Lab, and it works really well with eBird. But if you don't want to use technology, paper field guides are an excellent way to identify birds. And you will find a lot of these field guides are less than $15 on Amazon. And it's okay if you use an old one. Some of the bird names have changed, but the birds haven't changed. So that is a good thing to know. So you want to teach your students some basics about identifying birds. And the basic things you want to look at a bird to identify it is look at the basic size, look at the basic shape, look at the basic colors, like 3, and watch what it's doing. And those will give you some clues. And you can learn with your students. It's fun. So one thing we look at size, was the bird like a sparrow, robin? If they don't know what robin is, you can say a cardinal. Was it like a crow, or is it like a duck or a goose? And then you can kind of narrow it down from there. And you want to think about what grouping of birds. And, you can see, was it like a woodpecker? Was it an owl? Was it a duck type of bird? Was it a raptor, a goose, or was it like a gull or a songbird? So the shape can kind of help you. The main colors that you saw, sometimes birds don't stick around long. So you teach your kids to kind of look quick, and kids are really observant. So it'll be like a game to them. And watch what the bird was doing. Now, if you have feeders at your school, maybe it was there. Maybe you have a pond nearby your school. Maybe it was on the ground, trees or bushes, on a fence or wire. Maybe it was up in the air, soaring. So if you use the Merlin app, those are the questions it goes through and does with you if you're trying to identify a bird, and it'll help you narrow down what it was. If you use Merlin, that's what makes it it's so easy to use. And Merlin will give you a list such as this, because I did this at my house for a bird that was brown and tan and white. And it gave me those options. Now you might wonder, why did it give a red-winged blackbird? Well, the females are brown and white. Otherwise, I'd be saying, oh, that's really wrong. Merlin's pretty good. It's not infallible. And when you find the matching bird, you can click on it, say, this is my bird. Now, if you don't find your matching bird, it gives you options to go back and try to re-filter it. Or you can use a book. That works too. And then you have some options from there. You can decide whether you're going to report it using Merlin or eBird. Now, if you have younger students, I think Merlin is just fine. It's not going to go into a scientific database. If you identify and say, take me to Merlin, it's just going to give you a list of what you've seen. But if you use eBird, then you are entered into the scientific database. So it's just something you can decide how you want to approach. If you have really young students, I would just use Merlin, and they'll be really excited about that. And if you don't use the Merlin app, use a field guide to try to identify what you're seeing. And you can keep a paper list of what you're seeing. And you can enter into eBird later. Many, many options. So here's another tip to doing. You have enough time to do this. You can let your students become an expert of a local bird, so that when you're out looking for birds, if that's their bird, they're going to know it. They're going to be able to share that with everybody. So this is just a notebook of different ones that one teacher did. And of course, you can even have a frame of a bird that the kids fill in with colors. If you want to make it a little more simpler, you might wonder, well, how do I know what birds to put in there? And I'll show you that. So, well, here's what one school did for their focus bird. So if you have a little bit older students, they could write the name of the species, they could draw it, and they want to look at 2 different sources. There's some different things online or books. They could label 3 field marks. So it would be things like this bird has a white bill, or it has yellow stripes on its side. Those are field marks. They could listen to the sounds on the internet, and they could describe what it sounds like. And they could write natural history notes on the back. They could really, really get to know their bird well. If you want to know what the common birds you might expect to see in your area, if you go to Merlin, you're going to click on, it has an Explore Birds little tab. You hit the slider to set it to local settings, and then it'll generate a list for you of your common birds that you could expect. And that'll help you narrow down it a lot. So the next slide, I'm going to show you in Central Florida, where I'm coming from. These are some of our common winter birds, and actually it'll give you a list of about 20. So I could expect to see right now palm warblers, red-winged blackbirds, ospreys, common gallinoo, and so on and so forth. You might be in a little bit different part of Florida. You might see other things. Prior to the count date, decide how you're going to submit your data. Like I said, you can use Merlin, but it's only going to record species. It's not going to count numbers, and it doesn't go into the database. You can use eBird. You can put your numbers in, and it does get into the database. But for both options, you need to have an eBird account in order to be in the Great Backyard Bird Count. And it doesn't need to be a backyard, by the way. I didn't mention that. So to use Merlin, you do that whole bird ID. And then when you get to this is my bird, then you click take me to Merlin, and then it's going to register it through Merlin. And again, that's a really good thing to do if you have younger students, or maybe you don't have a lot of time to do this, just to get your kids kind of seeing what counting birds looks like. But if you want to use eBird, I'll go through how to do that. Again, this is being recorded, so you can go back and watch it. So you can do eBird one of 2 ways. You can do it on a paper list. And if you want me, I've put my email in the chat. I can even send you one that I have, a paper checklist, and then you can enter it online later. Or you can get eBird Mobile, which is really nice. And you can submit it from your device. It just depends, I know with students, we don't always want to use our phone. So I totally understand that. But here's how you use the eBird app. Oh, the website. But if you use the website, you're going to have to track your date, time, location, and your distance. If you use the app, it's going to take care of that for you. It'll oops, all right. Susan, if you could mute here, maybe I could do this. Got it. All right. So we can go to the next slide. So what do you do for the Great Backyard Bird Count? You count birds anywhere. Again, it doesn't need to be in a backyard for 15 minutes. That's the minimum, is 15 minutes. You can definitely count longer. You can count multiple times during the day. If you have different classes coming through, each class could count. You need to keep track of time, and you need to give your best estimate on the number of individuals for each species. Doesn't need to be perfect. This is community science. Scientists understand that we're not going to have the same amount of accuracy that they will, but we'll do our very best to be accurate. You can count any bird that is wild that you can identify by sight or sound. You can't count like, barnyard chickens and people's parakeets that they have in a cage outside their house. And if you can't identify the bird, like this picture, I was out somewhere recently and I couldn't figure out what that was. It was backlit. I couldn't figure, so I don't count that. It's okay. You can't figure out what everything is. And tell your students that too. So something you need to know when you're out about birds is you need to know some etiquette. So if you're watching a bird, if you're too close and it stops doing what it was doing, you're too close. Tell your students to back up. Tell them to keep their voices low. Stay on trails if you're hiking somewhere there's a park, and stay off of private property. Don't get too close to nests because the birds might abandon their nest. And it's possible for some birds to be on nests right now. Don't play bird calls. And tell your students, if you're doing this, maybe multiple classes are out, if one class is seeing a bird, they should move quietly so they can see it too and they don't scare it away. After you submit your data, you can watch the live map on the Great Backyard Bird Count website, which I have the website up there. And it's really fun when the map is live. When you submit your data, a yellow dot will glow in your location. And the kids now know that their data counted. And I think that's one of the most powerful things about this whole event, is it becomes very real. So try that out. So in the next part, I'm going to tell you how to use eBird Mobile. And this is also found on the www.birdcount.org. They have this on their website as well. So this is what you do. So you have the mobile app. And I would download it ahead of time. You start a checklist. So normally to start a checklist, there's a little button down in the corner that says submit. Just click that and then you'll be able to hit the start checklist and it keeps the time for you. Then next, it has a little part at the top to choose your location. If you click on it, it can, if there's a local birding hotspot nearby, you can choose that. Maybe you're by a park. If not, you can just click and it'll come up with the address of your location. And that's important for the scientists. And then it'll have a list of birds in your area. And what you do is you click on the left side of each bird name to add how many birds are observed. Now there is a little bar up here. And if you know you're seeing, let's say, a black-bellied whistling duck, if you put BLACK, it'll generate any names that start with black, and then you don't have to scroll through the whole list. And if you have so let's say you saw wood ducks, so you typed in WOOD, and it came up wood duck, and you saw 2. And if you want to check that you have the right identification, the Merlin is connected to this as long as you've downloaded Merlin, and you can click on it and it'll come up with a picture. You can say, yeah, this is what we saw. You can always go back and correct the numbers because sometimes our fingers kind of slip and it might hit like 200 instead of 2. And you can fix that. And an easy way to find a bird on the list, again, is to type the first few letters and then it'll come up. In case you saw American goldfinch, you type in GOLD. Now, if a bird has an R next to its name, it means it's rare for your location. It might be because it's just the wrong time of year. And birds do come early, especially here to Florida, or it could be just rare to our area. And it does happen. So if you're really confident, like here's some snow geese that showed up in our area a few months ago, and they are rare. So this is what you do if you're really confident that you did see something rare. We'll go to the next slide and I'll show you what to do. You have to put a description in about why you think it was that thing. Now, if you don't feel confident, then don't put the rare bird in. It's okay. No one's going to get mad. But maybe you really did find something rare, and it does happen. You can type in, and if you really have a picture, you can even put that in. But don't worry about it if you don't know how to do that. It's still good just to have a description, because rare birds do show up in Florida all the time. So when you finish, you can review it first. I always review it because sometimes my hands slip and random birds get in there, like, swan goose, like, oh, I didn't see that. You can just click them out and you make any changes. And you might not want to submit right away because this might be where you want to submit in your classroom. If you're able to project the website, you can watch it go in live. If you submit from the field, the kids aren't going to see that. Okay, so next If you did forget to put in a location, it's going to prompt you to do that. And you can just click on that and your GPS will come up. It's pretty user-friendly. Once your list is ready, you can submit if you're ready. Now, here's an alternative I'll show you if you want to submit it live in your classroom and show the students the point going up on the map where you're submitting. I recommend that. So you go to the birdcount.org website and you could submit it from your phone and you'll see it go up there live. Plus you'll see all the other places in the world where checklists are being submitted, and it is worldwide. It's really pretty exciting. So you can do multiple bird counts throughout the day. You just need to do a separate checklist. So if you have multiple classes, just submit the ones, let the kids see it, and then you can start another one for a different class. And you can compare them later. So did anyone have any questions? So you could either put them in the chat or you can unmute yourself and you can ask your questions. Any questions? Looking at the chat. Okay, well, we're going to go to the next slide. Then you can still ask. We're going to do another webinar in March. If you are wanting to do some gardening for wildlife, I'll do a program on that. And that's not just for birds, but for pollinators as well. So you now have the, you're going to be on the email that gets, the email blast that gets sent each month, but check your spam or junk folder because I think it sometimes ends up in there. I do see a question from David. Yes, you can definitely submit multiple sightings in the same area, and that's kind of what they expect for schools to do. That's totally fine. As long as you just start them and have the accurate time, that's fine. And I agree. It's a lot of fun. So we can go to the next slide. I have my contact information. So there's my email. And again, this will be put on Orange Audubon's YouTube channel so you can watch it and you can send it to your friends. And that way lots of people can do this and we can get good data on birds and help help them, because scientists can't help what they don't know what's there. And it doesn't affect the accuracy of the numbers, because what happens, it'll get averaged out. And it's very true, because you might see, maybe you see 100 robins in the morning because they're busy eating. In the afternoon, maybe you only see 2. And that's still, that shows researchers, bird activity throughout the day. So I'm going to stop the recording. Let's see.